All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be week 2 of how the sausage was made. In general, this is why I tend to try and stick with the guys that I paid for at least like 2 or 3 weeks. Because that first week doesn't really tell us everything. It doesn't tell us the whole story. I mean, right now, I'm going to guess that the Bills are going to play the Saints in the Super Bowl or something like that. But in general, trying to figure out was it a 1 week thing? Who's going to come out of the gates fast? Who needed a little bit more time, who needed a little less time, who showed all their cards week 1, and then everybody's going to know how to deal with them the rest of the way. Something like that is occurring. Now, I'm not going to say that like when we start breaking down some of the box scores, there aren't going to be some guys that we're going to be panicking on, because there are, but there's going to be other guys where it's like, okay, well, this is why I paid for them in the first place, and they finally put up this week. There was a couple strange benchings in my main money league. Marvin Harrison Jr. got benched. Ouch on that guy. I think he's going to actually win that game. Looking at this stuff, like Alvin Kamara, again, like when you're wrong, you're wrong. 29-year-old over the age apex looked like his efficiency was down, 4 touchdowns today. He's the week 2 MVP at this point. I think I have this pulled up right here. Week 2 MVP is going to be Alvin Kamara with those 4 touchdowns, 1 receiving, 3 rushing touchdowns. James Cook, he's another one we can start talking about, like league winners after week 2. Kamara, everybody had a shot at him. James Cook, basically everybody had a shot at him. A-Chain, and I talked about this after watching the Thursday night game, much better. And I already thought like he was really good. Didn't think that he had necessarily the downfield receiving skills that I saw on Thursday night game. Dobbins looks like he's going to be a league winner. James Conner, those guys. We'll talk a little bit about Braylon Allen when we get to after waivers. I want to break down some of that stuff. I general right now, I don't know if I was go as far as say he's an RB2, because you're looking at 11 combined opportunities, but you're getting into that range where like if he's going to be used in the red zone and he's going to get plus or minus 10 opportunities a game, like, yeah, you're getting really close to standalone value. I have Breece in both my leagues, and the waiver claim league, I'm probably not going to be able to get him. In my Fab league, yeah, I'm going to be dropping a pretty good chunk on him, especially as a handcuff to Breece at this point. We'll talk about some of the other guys that are out there. Marvin Harrison, as we talked about, like 4 for 8, 130 and a touchdown or 2 touchdowns. DK had 14 targets. Malik Neighbors, another 18 targets. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that. This is why I say like some of this is just bad coaching. That's your guy. That's the guy you got to get the ball to 18 times. Doesn't matter how you get him the football. You got to get him 18 opportunities a game because he's your best player. So when you see guys like Marvin Harrison have like 3 opportunities, that's just bad coaching. When you see a guy like Malik Neighbors have 18 opportunities, it doesn't mean they're always going to be necessarily efficient, but you got to find a way to get them that opportunity when it comes down to that. And a few injuries. Another one to talk about was this Quentin Johnston one. Like, this is the difference between good coaching and bad coaching. Doesn't matter how good Quentin Johnston is at football. 5 for 6 for 51 and 2 touchdowns. Sometimes you can figure out a way to take what you have and turn it into something good. Now, in this case, it can be the other team is trying to take away your better options. You still have to be able to take advantage of that if you want to win football games. The Chargers are going to be pretty good this year in general. And then finally, we get some of those tight ends that we thought we were going to pay for to break out. And then the 2 other ones that we can talk about, like Hunter Henry and Gesicki. Gesicki, 9 targets. I'm going to wait on the snap share on that one. And Hunter Henry, 12 targets. This is stuff that we were tracking in the offseason, so that's not overwhelmingly too interesting to that. Saber, whoever, for the Redskins, he goes 7 field goals for 22 points, it looks like. Fairburn, so this is another one like you just taking pieces of good offenses. Carlson, he's just a fantasy guy, MVP. Auburn, let's see, moving on. Bills, that's not predictable going up against the Dolphins. I wouldn't be rolling that. The Texans this week, yeah, that was pretty predictable. Vikings are always going to be a play because they have a lot of pressure. They're going to take away the run, so that's like boom bust defense regardless of the matchup. And Steelers, yeah, probably they're a good team. Chiefs are one of the better ones. Jets, I rolled the Jets. I had them. So getting into the games a little bit. Already talked about Bills and Dolphins. If you're wondering about that one, I think I did that in the grift. In this case, Tua got knocked out. A-Chain's really good. And then Tua threw 3 picks. And Bob's your uncle at that point. Like didn't really need a lot out of the Bills' weapons. James Cook, 3 touchdowns. That's just how it went in that one. A-Chain's really good at football. Saints Cowboys. So again, I talk about this like you're looking at right now Derek Carr potentially being, fantasy relevant, especially because, he fell into the end zone. That's also something that what would hurt him being fantasy relevant. So again, 2 passing touchdowns to go along with another rushing touchdown. That's really interesting. Outside of 2 quarterback leagues, I don't know how sustainable this is going to end up being. 11 for 16 for 243, 2 touchdowns. Kamara, 20 carries, 115, 3 touchdowns. I don't know if he's going to be able to hold up to this. One of the problems with the age apex, and we saw this last year with Stephon Diggs, it's not necessarily how guys start the season, it's how they fall apart later in the season. So maybe when what's his face? And I can bring this up because I'm having one of those blanks right now. Maybe he won't be able to keep this pace up for the entire season. And when Kendre Miller gets off of IR, he'll get eaten into a little bit. Because Jamal Williams at this point has like a very specific skill set within the offense. The other thing is Rashid Shaheed, we were talking about this, like gonna have a certain amount of fringe usage, either is as a flex wide receiver 3, even wide receiver 2, based off of just what he can take any single touch to the house going on. And I'm not going to talk too much about Chris Olave. I think he was flawed to begin with. This is not anything to be worried about when it comes down to that. Cowboys, I was talking about this, like some of these teams that had all these distractions going into the season. I thought it was going to be the 49ers. The Bengals were pretty easy to predict on this one. The Cowboys are another one that may be one of those teams that are out there. In general, Rico Dowdle leads the backfield in rushes. That's not surprising. Zeke's at 6, but it was a blowout, so who cares? And then Schoonmaker, 6 for 43. That's something I was expecting to happen. Jalen Tolbert, 6 for 82. So he may end up being the number 2 in this offense. Again, I have to look at the snap shares on that one, see how consistent that is. CeeDee Lamb with the receiving touchdown. I don't really see anything else that's really interesting out of this bunch. Buccaneers, Lions. So the Buccaneers are going to lose to the Saints in the NFC Championship game right now. Because it looks like the Buccaneers are like one of the best teams in football. So Baker May only throws 1 touchdown, but he has, I think he had another rushing touchdown to go along with this in this one. And Baker Mayfield, again, talking about like last week in the 4 rushing touchdowns or passing touchdowns. Baker Mayfield has just enough deceptive nimbly bimbly that if he can throw passing touchdowns, he will be fantasy relevant. That's how it goes. Rachaad White, 10 carries, not effective. Bucky White, 7 carries, a little bit more effective, not very effective. So was kind of expecting that to be occurring anyway in the offense. The biggest thing with Rachaad White, like that 1 for 5 on one target. That's something that's a little surprising, expecting that's where most of his usage is going to come from. Chris Godwin, 7 for 117 on 8 targets, 1 touchdown. I did see that most of this was in the first half, so I'm kind of curious, if he got injured today. So yeah, I think all of this work was done in the first half, so didn't see anything in the second half when it came down to that one. Micah Evans, 3 for 42. This is another one, like the Buccaneers defense. I did see maybe better than was advertised on this one. David Montgomery falls in the end zone. 19 targets for the Sun God to go with another 11 targets for Jameson Williams. So Jameson Williams looks like he is going to be like in that conversation for league winner at this point. And Sam Laporta, like that, yeah, that's what part of the reason why I was like, hey, I'm selling. I don't think he's going to be able to do it again, just because it's going to be very difficult to predict where the opportunities are going to go on a week-to-week basis. 7 targets, 7 receptions for Jahmyr Gibbs in this one, another 4 for David Montgomery. Sione Vaki, 1 target, 1 reception, 17 yards. That's one of the ones, like, I don't think he's necessarily going to eat into these two very much, but seeing that they are going to bring him, make him part of the offense in one way, shape, or form, he would end up being either a cuff or standalone value right now when it comes down to that. Like that's something else to be looking at, the standalone usage. Packers and Colts, like this one does not surprise me at all. So Malik Willis did look better with the last of his time with the Titans, and all they're going to do is come out and go like, hey, we're going to run the football down your throat, and then Anthony Richardson can't throw 3 interceptions. Now, I did see some of the breakdown of Anthony Richardson last week and his picks and some of his inaccuracy weren't his fault. That's what it looked like. It was a receiver slipping on the ground. Like, he does still have accuracy problems. So I do want to see those 3 interceptions that he threw. Jonathan Taylor, only 12 carries, 103 yards in this one. And then you're looking at Alec Pierce being potential league winner. That's a little crazy to say out loud. I think right now, just the way the offense is functioning, he may end up having a lot more value. When Anthony Richardson just wants to uncork it, there are certain problems, and I'm not a big fan of RPO offenses because of how fickle they can be. So again, I like more pro style offenses. Like I'm going to punch you in the mouth, and then I'm going to be balanced, and I'm going to throw, and I'm going to take what you give me. So in this case, like Michael Pittman, yeah, this is one of the ones like the targets are there, but like yeah, this is bust on him, and I have him in one of my leagues. So that is a kind of a problem. Adonai Mitchell, I bet these are all air yard targets in this one. And then over to Green Bay with Malik Willis. Like he was going to be fringe because of that rushing upside. All he had to do was keep the toys on track and basically have the Colts try and beat the Packers. So this is not generally surprising. Josh Jacobs, 32 for 151. And I don't see any other opportunities in this one. Emmanuel Wilson does 5 for 9. Marshawn Lloyd does another 6 carries. So they just kept this all on the ground. Jaden Reed, 2 for 37. Malik Willis, 4 for certain. Yeah, that's just like good football right there. Romeo Doubs is the guy to be rolling out as like a very ugly or wide receiver too. That's not surprising. Dontavian Wicks, finds his way with 1 touchdown. Kraft, Luke Musgrave. I'm a little interested to find out what the snap share between these two guys are. Based off how this game looked like it rolled with all the run, I bet Luke Musgrave still kept like a very high snap share, but with the amount, Tucker Kraft still kept a high snap share, but with the amount of probably like 2 tight ends that they ran, I would not be surprised that like Luke Musgrave had a higher type snap share in this one going on. All right. Jets, Titans. So this was a lot closer, and then Will Levis did Will Levis things at the end than I thought. The other big news in this one is Braylon Allen. And again, like when I go look at this, like these 2 touchdowns that Braylon Allen had, they were red zone touchdowns, like or pretty close to, or 12. They were 12-yard pass reception in the first quarter. So he vultured my Breece Hall, and then another 20-yard run in the fourth quarter. So again, they're using him in high value situations. So this is not just a spell guy. It looks like, hey, we want to get him involved with the offense. So again, like probably going to be worth like a fair amount of fab, if for no other reason. Like, yeah, you're looking at a league winner if Breece goes down. And again, like he might have like his own standalone value in this one. Garrett Wilson, 6 targets. I was thinking about this today. When it comes down to Garrett Wilson, like we may not actually get a good indication of what this offense looks like until Mike Williams like ramps his way back up, 1 for 19 in this one. And at that point, it's going to get a lot harder to pull coverage towards Garrett Wilson. Like they're going to burn you at that point. You're going to see like more of that Allen Lazard week 1 coming on down the line. And Breece Hall, he was not very effective at the first half of this game. A lot of this came later in the game, but that's why you paid like 8 targets for Breece Hall. I didn't even realize that he had 8 targets today. So Calvin Ridley, 4 for 77 and a touchdown. He also had a rushing touchdown to go along with it, kind of helping me to have an outside chance on Monday night. Tony Pollard is still the guy holding the backfield, 17 for 62 and another 6 targets in that one. So like Tony Pollard is on his way to being like league winner at this point. It looks like it. And I don't really see anything else that interests me at all. 49ers, Vikings. So this is one of the other ones I'm not surprised based off of how the Vikings are set up. They have good coaching. They have a particular style of defense that allows them to win any single week. And their offense is very quarterback friendly. Now, some of the other news, and I actually wrote this down that I saw, Justin Jefferson, 4 for 133, a touchdown on 7 targets, 97-yard long. But is he left the game with a quad in this one. Ty Chandler, 10 carries for 82. So this may be closer to a 50-50 split. This is one of the things that we were a little bit worried about coming out of week 1, trying to guess how the 2 guys were going to shake out between the 2 of them. Aaron Jones stole another 6 targets, 5 for 36. So again, probably 50-50. I would say it's probably going to be like hot hand between the 2 of those guys. Sam Darnold, 5 for 32, just enough nimbly bimbly. Yeah, you're getting really close to yeah, you know how you shouldn't have been spending on elite quarterback. You should have just been picking up Sam Darnold on that one. Brock Purdy, he does throw a touchdown pass. Jordan Mason still looks like he's got a little bit of league winner written on him, 20 for 101 touchdown. Gary Endo, only 1 carry. Not as much Debo as I was expecting. Devo in the passing game, Ayuk still looks like he's got a hangover from signing that contract in general. And then George Kittle, and this is the value of drafting a guy like George Kittle, is any given week he's going to allow you to go out and not just be elite or not just be elite himself, but to be able to beat anybody else that's in the league that's going to be putting up those weeks. And I think he was tight end 2 this week, 1 overall. All right. Seahawks, Patriots. So this is another one with these ugly teams that are coached by defensive minded coaches. They can just drag you down in the mud, and they can stay in ball games later than they probably should have. And that's like what's going on with the New England as they lose in overtime 23-22 the Seahawks. Now, in this case, Antonio Gibson led the New England Patriots with 11 carries for 96 yards. And he also had like 1 target. Ramondre did 21 for 81, 1 touchdown. So they're just going to play this like really ugly style of football the entire year. And, if they can allow them, or if they can not make mistakes, they're going to be in every single ball game they play. Now, this means they're going to end up probably being a fringe football team, unless teams can kind of figure out the weakness in their defense, because they're just going to run the football. Now, does this mean like when we're going to see our Drake May shares and potentially the offense getting a little bit dynamic? Like, that's harder to say, because as long as they can win games, and they're 1-1 right now, they're going to keep this up. Now, overall, on the other side for Seattle, this is another one of those weeks where it's like, hey, Zach Charbonnet gets the nod. He does fall in the end zone, and he does another 5 for 5 for 31 in the passing game. But I had to roll him out as an emergency guy in my main money league. And in this case, like, what I will say about this is not the type of matchup that is indicative of maybe of his talent, because he's going to be running into a brick wall. They're going to say, hey, Geno Smith, go out and beat us. And he does 327, 1 touchdown. He also did another 5 for 8 in the rushing game. DK did 14 targets, 10 for 129 touchdown. JSN, 12 for 117. So if there's a chance that we're going to get that like JSN breakout, like it's going to be this game, especially with Tyler Lockett only going 2 targets in this one to go along with it. So again, like right now, I would say that like I'm still holding on to my Zach Charbonnet shares as a lottery ticket. Would expect like Kenneth Walker, based off of what was kind of talked about last week, is probably going to play this coming week, but I don't necessarily think this is indicative of anything. This is the Patriots going like, we're going to play dirty, and we're going to play ugly, and we're going to let you make mistakes, and we're going to be in the football game into like overtime at this point. So that's not surprising me. Going back to this one, am still tracking a little bit of Jalen Polk, so like 1 carry and another 3 targets. So still probably has, I don't know if I would go as far as say league winner. He probably still will be fantasy relevant at the end of the year. It looks like they are grooming him to be the guy in the offense down the line as the season goes on. And a Hunter Henry probably is going to be like fringe top 10 tight end. So again, if you're into that type of thing down the line, Giants and Commanders. This was a little interesting. So the Giants score 3 touchdowns. The Commanders kicked 7 field goals, but the New York Giants missed the first PAT, and then they missed the two-point conversions afterwards, and that's how your game rolls down the line. So Malik Neighbors, and I did see that he had 200 air yards in this game on 18 targets. So from a fantasy standpoint, if some way, shape, or form they can keep this up, yeah, like Malik Neighbors is going to be special from a fantasy perspective. The other guy is Devin Singletary, 16 for 95 and a touchdown, and that's to go along with 1 target. Tyrone Tracy, this was one of the ones that I was expecting him to eat into Devin Singletary. Doesn't look like it's going to happen at this point. Only 1 carry and no target. So again, if I was stashing, I'm probably looking to go the other direction, unless the snap share says like this was some type of one-off in this case. Now over to the Redskins, Jane Daniels, I mean, still good. Like the big question mark on him was going to be like how many turnovers he's going to have. And it looks like Caleb Williams is going to be the guy that we're going to be a little bit more worried about that. B-Rob, 17 for 133. I bet this is going to be mostly 50-50 snap share with Austin Eckler based off last week. Zach Ertz leads everybody. McLaurin, 8 targets, 6 for 22. That's a little ugly. Don't see Luke McCaffrey. That's a little concerning. Brian Robinson Jr., Austin Eckler, 3 targets. So that, yeah, they're going to be like, 1A, 1B in this offense. It does look like, but B-Rob probably is going to be leaning towards like lead winner time. When it comes down to that, again, You know, I like opportunity. You got to be on the field first, but when you're on the field, if they're just giving you opportunity, that's just as good as if you're like, not on the field. So, or in the case of like your Derrick Henry, when we're talking about him in a second, like he just generally has to be on the field half the time because they know they're not going to, no one is going to say that Derrick Henry is going to get the football on passing downs. That's not what he's designed to do. If everybody in the stadium knows that he's going to get the ball 50% of the time that he's on the field, he can still be on the field because that's going to be the 15 to 20 carries that he's going to be on the field for. It's not rocket science at that point. Chargers, Panthers. Now I will say this right now, Justin Herbert, I'm surprised that he did have 20 pass attempts in this game. They just beat the ever loving life out of the Panthers in this one. J.K. Dobbins looks like he's going to be a league winner. 17 for 131, one touchdown, 43 yards. I did put in a trade for J.K. Dobbins with Jalen Daniels. Heard nothing back, which is not surprising from the guy that I sent the actual trade request into. And then Gus Bus, 18 for 59. So this is still going to be relatively a split backfield, it does look like. Vidal was also inactive, I did see in this case. Ladd McConkey, 4 targets, 2 for 26. And again, we pay to have guys produce. It doesn't matter. You could say like bad game script, whatever. It doesn't matter in this one. Quentin Johnson, I don't know how many Quentin Johnson owners were out there, but this is what good coaches do. They're going to figure out a way. And if that's the guy that you say that the other team dares you to beat them with, and you do, like that's just how it goes when it comes down to that. Over on the Panther side, I'm not going to say anything about Bryce Young. I'm probably not going to watch any tape on him the entire year. Chuba did 10 for 64, another 5 targets. So again, if you drafted your Chuba to be a shake and basic RB2, he does look like after this week there you still got that chance. So hopefully you rolled him out. The other thing to look at in this one is not Deontay Johnson disappointing or Adam Thielen. I did not see Xavier Leggett, and I'm actually kind of curious if there was an injury or something involving this. After the 7 targets he had last week, the hope was that he was going to get integrated, and there's not even a target or anything, nothing about him. So like that's a little concerning on that one. All right, Browns, Jaguars. So the Browns pulled this out, and Deshaun Watson wasn't good. I'm a little curious why Jameis Winston was in the game at all. I did look at this ahead of time. So Pierre Strong goes out with a hamstring, and Deontay Foreman, I looked this up at one point, like he was leading Cleveland in rushing, 14 for 42 in this game. So again, this is going to be a little interesting because Pierre Strong like was tracking that he was the number 2 in this offense, but now with him going down, it's Deontay Foreman. And without red zone opportunities, it's a little bit difficult to say like if Jerome Ford was going to keep that 7 for 64, his value is going to come from the targets. And he only had 2 targets in this game. So again, little difficult to kind of figure that one. Jerry Jeudy 6 for 5 for 73. I mean, all the offense has to do is be like serviceable for some of these guys to have value. And then Amari Cooper, 8 targets, 3 for 11. So I'm going to guess again, these were all air yards. And at this point, like if you can pry Amari Cooper away from the owner in your league for a bag of chips, like those are going to land eventually. And it just depends like how many weeks you're going to be able to buy if you're going to be slotting him into say like wide receiver 3 type flex range, because someone might want to get away from his production at this point. This does not look like this is age related. This looks like it's Deshaun Watson's arm. Trevor Lawrence, 220 passing. And in this one, like, I don't know, a couple other things. So Tank Bigsby goes out of the game with a shoulder, and then that's why there's no Tank Bigsby in this game. The other one, this like what's his face? Evan Ingram was a surprise scratch. I guess he pulled his hamstring in warmups. For the guy out there that I was knife fighting with in comments when I was talking about the Jaguars, Brenton Strains, 3 for 65, 6 targets. Gabe Davis did have 7 targets. I don't know what was going on. Brian Thomas had his 2 catches late in the game because I was thinking about rolling him, and I was kind of like looking to see if he was going to do anything. And they were like 2 big targets. You can see like his long of 66. And what's the other one? Like a 28 to go along with that. So like, yeah, they got to figure out this offense. And again, this is one of those ones where it's like, well, it's a bad matchup because it's Brown. I don't care. Like you still got to figure out a way to get the right guy, the right targets in a game. Like we could go back and we could look at Quentin Johnston. They won the game. The Chargers won the game by throwing the ball at Quentin Johnston. The Jaguars lost the game because they didn't throw the football to Brian Thomas enough. Let's see. Raiders, Ravens. So this is another one, like, defensive minded head coach that's just going to make you play in the mud. They're going to have you try it and make mistakes, and they're going to take advantage of this later in the game. And that's generally what goes on. Now, last year, for those that are like, new or old to the channel, I have particular problems with Lamar Jackson because I think he's a better football player or a better athlete than he is a football player in this case. And I think the Ravens don't make him play good quarterback. They allow him to do all of the good athlete things, and that's going to hurt you to a certain extent. So when you put together like 247, one touchdown to go along with 18 for 84 and a touchdown for Derrick Henry, you should win the game. And somehow they found a way to not win the game at this case. And this was like a pretty close game. I was actually really surprised about this because I had to roll out Zamir White and I was kind of tracking this and I was like, well, so you're telling me there's a chance that I could get a Zamir White touchdown on this one. So I was tracking this. Zamir White did lead everybody with 9 carries in this one, and that was to go along with another 4 targets. So this may end up being some type of game flow dependent when it comes to Zamir White, but the actual good carry went to Alexander Madison. He got the rushing touchdown. So I don't know what to do with Zamir White. I'm probably going to be looking to, in that league, to be rolling Braylon Allen if I could get a hold of him next week in that spot over Zamir White, because that's just ugly what he's doing. And again, our boy Gardner Minshew is keeping them alive. So Devontae Adams, 9 for 110, 1 touchdown along with 12 targets. I don't know how consistent that's going to be as the season goes on. But Brock Bowers doing 9 for 98. That's probably going to be pretty consistent. To be in that like volume based like wide receiver range as a tight end, like he may end up being the fantasy MVP when it comes to tight ends this year, based off capital put in. And then Michael Mayer's down there, 1 target. That's a little surprising. Nothing else. So I did put this in the comments to Crispy, I think it was the guy. Yeah, when you're wrong, you're wrong. So I'm wrong. He was right. Zay Flowers, 11 targets, 7 for 91, 1 touchdown. Yeah, he may not be a wide receiver 1, but that's good enough wide receiver 2 money at that point when it comes down to that. Now, in general, Rashad Bateman, 3 for 40, 4, and then one of them was a good play interception that you could call it a drop if you want to. Mark Andrews, 5 for 4. Isaiah Likely, 2 for 26, 3 targets. Again, I don't think he's droppable, because I think like if you bought him knowing what you were going to get out of him at that point. And he is going to probably be a cuff in one way, shape or form for Mark Andrews in that injury. So if you paid for him, I'd be keeping him. I would be expecting this to go on. And then the other thing is Justice Hill, only 2 targets to go along with that. Rams and Cardinals. So this one gets really, really interesting really quick. So Marvin Harrison, his first 2 targets of the game are touchdowns, 23 yards and 60 yards back to back. Now Cooper Kupp rolls an ankle in this game. We had a Blake Corum sighting, and even before Cooper Kupp rolled an ankle, this is like vintage bad Rams, where it's like, hey, we're going to force the football to the one guy on the field that everybody knows they're going to get the football to, but we're going to be bad on offense. That's 4 for 37 and 6 targets before he rolled that ankle. So again, like they weren't good. Then he rolls that ankle, and now they have to like figure it out. So I got nothing on the ankle at this point. Blake Corum, this was all late because when I left earlier today, he hadn't seen anything on the field. So this is when the blowout occurred. Kyren Williams, 12 for 25, 1 rushing touchdown. And I think that was in the 3rd quarter. So like Blake Corum, this 8 for 28 was like mostly later in the game. I was tracking that a little bit. Demarcus Robinson, 2 for 50. That's not interesting. Tyler Johnson, 2 for 20. So like that's kind of to be expected. I wasn't expecting him to be anything special. Jordan Whittington is going to be the guy to take the flyer on to see if he's going to be the guy that they build the offense around, with Kupp and Puka being out. In this case with Whittington, and I talked about this in like after waivers, guys have specific skill sets. So it doesn't necessarily mean that coaches are going to go like, well, with Puka going out, we're going to roll the wide receiver 4 into his spot. It doesn't work like that, because Demarcus Robinson may have been, had a particular role within the offense. They're comfortable with him doing his job, and they're not comfortable with someone else doing his job. When it comes to Jordan Whittington, the job that they want him to do, it may be closer to what Puka was doing in the offense, even though Tyler Johnson went down, or could end up being Kupp. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get that. Demarcus Robinson could end up going directly into that Cooper Kupp role that maybe Puka had to begin with, something along those lines. But at this point, like, if you're going to be buying a certain amount of pass attempts in a game, and the Rams do project to be one of the higher volume passing offenses, it ain't gonna hurt me to go out and throw a dart at Jordan Whittington, especially in deeper type leagues when it comes down to that. And then there's Ronnie Rivers, so he did play. Colby Parkinson, that's a little surprising in this one. And then no Blake Corum usage. So the other thing is James Conner does look like he's going to be a league winner. He could have had a second touchdown. He fumbled, and then Trey McBride fell on it. That's where Trey McBride got his in this game. And then DeMercado, 2 for 46. I talked about this with like Trey Benson. I don't necessarily think that Trey Benson is ever going to get the full backfield this year because of DeMercado. Next year, we could talk about like Trey Benson earning that job. But this year with DeMercado, like, I imagine that there's going to be a certain amount of work that they're going to trust him over. Trey McBride, again, 6 for 67. That's generally where I think he should be most weeks in this one. And then Kyler Murray does 5 for 59 to go along with those 3 passing touchdowns. So he's still in consideration to have one of those better leagues. We're going to talk a lot about Patrick Mahomes here in a second when we come down to that. Steelers and Broncos, again, this is another team in the Steelers that they don't care. They won. Doesn't have to be pretty. They're playing an offense that why give them any more opportunities than they need to do. 13-6 in this one, and it wasn't that close. You can see like it was 10-0 at halftime. 13-0 in the third quarter, and then the touchdown came late in the game, or this 2 field goals, it looks like. I thought it was a touchdown. Let's see, go look at this. Oh, two fourth quarter touch or field goals. So I thought it was a touchdown this one. So in this case, like, yeah, it was not even as close as the 13-6 score would make it out to be. Justin Fields, he does 8 for 27 on the ground to go along with one passing touchdown. May not have enough volume as an offense for his rushing upside to matter. Jaylen Warren, it does look like this is a little bit of the hamstring in this case, but it's Arthur Smith. So he does another like 2 targets, 2 for 19 to go along with it. So maybe there's a chance you're going to get your fringe RB2 back in this. Najee Harris is just going to be like volume based and not very efficient, 17 for 69 and 1 target, 2 targets in this one. Freiermuth leads everybody with 4 targets. Pickens another 4 targets. This is going to be the offense all year. And then Darnell Washington gets the passing touchdown to go along with it. If we're looking at the Broncos, Jaleel McLaughlin only 3 carries and no targets in this game. Josh Reynolds 5 for 4 for 93. I'm not trusting any part of this offense. So even the air yards that we were tracking on those 12 targets last week with Courtland Sutton, like those don't matter. Javonte, just based off of volume, I mean, he's still going to be like really ugly. Like he's at least able to do something in like scammer leagues. 5 for 48. Yeah, I want nothing to do with his offense. It looks like down the line. Bo Nix did have 2 more picks in this game. And like I said, I did watch some of the breakdown on Bo Nix and last week, and a lot of bad, some good, some not his fault. So in general, like if you're this is not a real football channel, this is a fantasy football channel. It may be a long season. It doesn't mean that he's a bust at this point. As opposed to our Caleb Williams shares. Joe Burrow. I did see some of this game, and there's something going on with the Bengals. I don't necessarily think it's Joe Burrow in this case. Like I would almost put the blame more on like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, whatever's going on with those guys. The other thing is Patrick Mahomes. We talked about this. Has to get a certain amount of passing or rushing work to offset for. Or excuse me. Let me back this up. He has to have elite passing, and what makes him valuable is that elite passing to go along with enough rushing upside. Now, if he can't get both those 2 things to go together, he's not going to have fantasy value. So again, more indication that like punting the position and going after like your Jane Daniels, your Kyler Murrays, and some of those guys are going to have more value, like your Sam Darnolds, than chasing MVP type seasons. Now, did we know that the league was going to be this screwed when it comes to like passing and scoring being down? Yes, we did. Did we know it was going to be this bad? No, but we knew it was going to be bad when it comes down to that. So Zach Moss, he does 12 for 34. Chase Brown, 4 for 31. Like I did drop him in both leagues, and I don't see any targets in this one. So like again, that opportunity, if they keep it like 2/3, 1/3 between the two guys, and Chase Brown is just going to be efficient. He's not going to have enough fantasy value. I'm waiting on Gesicki and this target share or a snap share 7 for 9 for 91, and especially with game flow in this one, where you can see that like at halftime it was 16-10 between these two teams, and it was relatively close. So if Gesicki was on the field enough, and we see like Eric All had 4 targets, Drew Sample had 3 targets. I'm going to guess like Tanner Hudson was a scratch in this one. So that's another one to be kind of paying attention to. Because if these guys are said he suited up. So if these guys are, if we can figure out who's going to be the tight end attached to Joe Burrow, that's going to have a certain amount of fantasy value. If they're all have their roles in their offense and the snap shares down, they're never going to be consistent enough to be rolling out there in this case. Jermaine Burton, 1 for 47. That I didn't see that earlier. When you're right, you're right. So it doesn't matter how the sausage is made sometimes. Andre Iosivas, I'm going to guess he was at 100% snaps again. 4 targets, 2 for 7, but 2 touchdowns. So if you rolled out your Andre Iosivas shares, he did pay off. Sometimes it doesn't matter how that happened in general. Jamar Chase, 5 for 4 for 35. Now, when it comes to the Chiefs, and they did get the victory, I did watch against some of this game. Carson Steele did come in the goal line, but that was very interesting to me in this case. And then Rashee Rice, he did take a 44-yarder to the house. So 6 for 5 for 75, 1 touchdown. Probably, if not a top 10 wide receiver, going to be very close this year when it comes down to that. And then Travis Kelce, 3 for 1 for 5. Like Father Time is undefeated, it looks like. And then Xavier Worthy, I'm not really worried because he was always going to be in this boom bust range attached to this offense. And then finally, Bears Texans. Didn't catch any of this game other than I was watching the ticker on this one. So some way, shape, or form, this ended up being a close game when it really was not a close game. Like Caleb Williams, not good. DeAndre Swift, 14 for 18 in this one. Like, yeah, this offense is not good. DJ Moore, 10 targets, 6 for 53. Like, I don't want anything to do with this offense right now, which is kind of concerning. The other thing is, and I'm going to go ahead and say that I didn't look at this earlier, but I think that what's his face, Damian Pierce, inactive with a hamstring. So Cam Akers comes in this game, does 7 for 32, to go along with 1 target. So not quite gonna say handcuff, but in deeper leagues, I would be leaning towards picking him up with the idea that this may end up being closer to a 50-50 timeshare down the line. This amount of usage in a game that ended up being this close makes me a little interested, unless Joe Mixon got knocked out. Oh, he did get knocked out. Ankle. So yeah, Cam Akers is going to definitely be one of the top waiver wire ads at this point. That's a little interesting. And then Nico Collins, obviously, like more of an alpha in the offense than I was anticipating. The Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, those things are not surprising at all. Tank Dell only 4 targets, 1 for -3. He did have a lot of air yards last week, so I'm going to say that he probably has a lot of air yards this week. And then Stephon Diggs, 4 for 37, 6 targets. That's generally how he was used last week. Like, this is just Nico's offense. So again, top 10 Nico season going to be on your way to go along with it. And the other thing, talking about like CJ Stroud versus Patrick Mahomes, when looking at it, like it was going to be hard for any of these non-rushing quarterbacks to be league winner. And again, we knew that passing was going to be down. We knew scoring was going to be down. I don't know if we knew it was going to be to this level, but it's going to be tough. So downgrading just general pieces, like some of the trades that I'm going to be putting out there shortly are going to be like, I just want guys off my roster for a bag of chips because I need the roster spot more than I need the actual player. So in general, this is just me looking at the box scores for week 2. And again, like sometimes I don't want to know how the sausage is made, like Iosivas. Sometimes I do, and kind of get an idea of like what I need to be looking at going into the week, like figuring out my roster. It looks like I'm going to be putting a lot of fab on Braylon Allen and Cam Akers at this point. Those are the 2 guys that I would probably be going after in general. But yeah, I'll get out Chasing the Dragon tomorrow. And then then I'll get out the after waivers on Tuesday. It looks like a lot more stuff happened this week than last week.